The war had stretched longer than anyone in the Council had ever predicted. For decades, the coalition of star nations had poured fleets, soldiers, and resources into the void, only to watch them dissolve under the relentless tide of the Kralik. They were not the most technologically advanced species, nor the most numerous, but they carried something else, an obsession for conquest that burned like a disease. Every time one front was stabilized, 3 more collapsed. Every time the Council devised a strategy, the Kralik adapted faster. Entire sectors vanished under their occupation. Refugees clogged the safer routes of the galaxy. Whispers of surrender slithered through the halls of power. The Supreme Assembly convened once again. The chambers were filled with delegates whose eyes reflected exhaustion more than defiance. Screens hovered in the air, red with casualty numbers. A voice rose above the murmurs. "We cannot fight them any longer. We must negotiate terms." Another spat back. "Negotiate with beasts who devour planets? You think they will honor an agreement when their only law is domination?" The chamber drowned in overlapping arguments, some for desperate final offensives, others for total capitulation. But through the noise, an old voice rasped. It belonged to a scholar from the minor world of Sereth, rarely listened to, often dismissed. "There is one path we have never considered," the elder said. "Call upon the humans." A ripple of confusion, then disdain. "Humans?" scoffed one delegate. "That primitive outlier species? Their fleet is nothing compared to ours. Their worlds are scattered, fragile, and insignificant." "Yes," the elder answered, "and yet their reputation is whispered across the fringe. They fight differently. They do not rely solely on weapons but on their will, their imagination. I have read the archives. When the Chor Imperium cornered them, humanity broke their blockade not with superior firepower, but with cunning strategies no one anticipated. When the Maul Horde tried to enslave them, the humans did not merely resist, they turned the Horde's own brutality against them. Every time they face extinction, they endure, adapt, and strike back harder." The chamber fell into a tense silence. Some looked intrigued. Most looked horrified. "You want us," a governor from the Veil Systems hissed, "to invite a species known for breaking rules, defying treaties, and refusing submission? They will not obey council command. They never have. They will obey no one," the elder admitted. "But that is why we need them. We are losing because we play by the enemy's game. The humans, they invent new games." Voices rose again, but now the tone was different. Fear battled with desperation. Pride clashed with pragmatism. In the end, the truth settled over them like a suffocating cloak. They had no choices left. The council voted, not unanimously, but decisively enough. The message was sent into the void, encoded with urgency and a plea rarely uttered by the great powers of the galaxy. It was a simple transmission that spread to the scattered colonies of Earth's descendants. "Humanity, we are losing. We call upon you." No one knew if the humans would answer. No one knew what price they might demand. But as the red markers of defeat spread further across the galactic map, the Assembly understood one thing with bitter clarity: the fate of the galaxy no longer rested in their own hands. They arrived without ceremony, without parades, without the gleaming armadas that other species flaunted. The humans came in vessels that looked almost crude compared to the shining fleets of the Council. Their hulls bore scars, not polished perfection. Their weapons bristled with odd modifications, many of which no one in the chamber could even identify. They were a patchwork force, a fraction of the size of the coalition navies. And yet, when they disembarked into the Grand Forum, they carried themselves with a confidence that made even the tallest Corran delegate fall silent. At their head stood a single figure, armored but unadorned, the face hidden behind a simple visor. The voice that echoed through the forum was calm, steady, and utterly unimpressed by the grandeur surrounding it. "You called us," the human said. "Now you want to know if we will save you." The arrogance was unbearable to some delegates. A HFY diplomat hissed. "You? Save us? Your fleet is a fraction of ours. Your technology centuries behind. What can you possibly do that we could not?" The human tilted their head. If numbers and weapons decided wars, you would not be begging for help. The chamber went silent. You have strength, yes. But strength without imagination is just weight. The Krallic are not beating you because they are stronger. They are beating you because they know you expect the predictable. You fight with rules, with structures. They fight with hunger. That is why you are losing. Murmurs filled the chamber. The human's voice sharpened. We do not promise you easy victories. We do not promise you honor. What we promise is that if we fight, we will fight to end the enemy's will, not just their ships. But if you want us, you must give us autonomy. We will not march under your council's orders. We will wage war our way. The demand triggered outrage. Some shouted that it was madness, others that it was betrayal waiting to happen. But the faces of the commanders, who had watched fleet after fleet burn, told a different story. Pride would not save them. Obedience to protocol had brought them to the edge of annihilation. At last, the council leader spoke. You will have your autonomy. But deliver us a victory, or you will answer for failure. The human envoy nodded once. Then let us begin. The first days baffled the coalition. The humans refused to amass fleets in grand formations. They dispersed into small, fast-moving units. They requested access to intelligence networks rather than ships. They asked questions the Council's admirals had never thought relevant. How do the Krallic communicate across sectors? Where do their supply chains cross? What is their hierarchy of trust? They studied not just weapons, but psychology, culture, superstition. We do not win by striking the sword, the human commander explained, but by breaking the hand that holds it. For the first time in years, the coalition felt a flicker of something alien in this war: anticipation. The humans were preparing not for a battle, but for a play. Backhand index pointing right. The Krallic expected resistance to look familiar: mass fleets, drawn-out defenses, desperate charges meant to buy time. What they faced instead was silence, confusion, and shadows. The first signs appeared along their supply routes. Freighters carrying rations, fuel, and munitions vanished without a trace. Distress calls echoed, then cut abruptly. When patrols investigated, they found no wreckage, only empty space and the lingering static of interference. At first they assumed the coalition had developed new cloaking weapons. They did not yet understand they were being toyed with. The truth dawned when a captured Krallic transport was recovered, its crew slaughtered not by weapons but by fear. Messages had been intercepted, rewritten, and transmitted back. The crew believed their own leaders had betrayed them. They turned on one another in paranoia until no one remained. The Krallic called it sabotage. The humans called it theater. Coalition officers watched in disbelief as small human strike teams infiltrated enemy sectors without grand fleets, using deception as their primary weapon. They mimicked Krallic command signals, redirected convoys into ambushes, and forged communications that made entire enemy squadrons retreat from phantom threats. Every move was unpredictable. Every result devastating. One alien admiral finally demanded answers from the human commander. You aren't fighting! You are cheating! This isn't war! The visor tilted. The voice was iron. If the enemy defines war, they win. We don't cheat. We redefine. The first major victory came not in a battle but in a collapse. A Krallic forward station, vital to their offensive corridor, suddenly fell quiet. Coalition fleets approached with caution, expecting a trap. Instead, they found the station abandoned, its defenses sabotaged from within. In the central hall, scrawled across the walls in the enemy's own blood, were words none of the coalition had written: "We see you. We are inside." Panic spread across the Krallic front. For the first time, their soldiers hesitated before charging. For the first time, their commanders doubted the loyalty of their own ranks. Whispers of human interference became legend overnight. Entire battalions mutinied, convinced their leaders were compromised. Every victory multiplied into 10 more as fear consumed them faster than any weapon could. Among the coalition, disbelief turned to awe. How? One general whispered during a debrief. We had numbers, weapons, and strategy, Yet we bled. They arrive with scraps, and the monsters bleed instead. The humans' reply was quiet, almost cold. Because you thought war was about killing bodies. It is about breaking minds. Ships rust. Fleets burn. But fear endures. The coalition began to hope again, fragile but real. For the first time in decades, the galaxy whispered that perhaps the tide could turn. The Krallic, humiliated, answered the only way they knew, with overwhelming force. Their supreme warlord gathered the largest fleet yet seen, a wall of firepower stretching across the stars. It dwarfed anything the coalition or humanity could field. Entire sectors were emptied of defenders, ordered to converge on a single decisive front. The message was clear: no more games, no more whispers. They would crush the humans publicly, erase the myth before it grew too large. Coalition leaders despaired. Even with recent victories, the numbers were impossible. We should fall back, one admiral urged. We cannot withstand such a storm. But the human commander stood unmoving. They want us afraid. Good. That means they've committed everything. When the enemy brings their entire weight to bear, they also bring their weakness. What weakness? A Veil captain demanded. That armada is invincible. The human's voice hardened. It is invincible, because you keep trying to fight it head on. We won't. The plan was madness, and yet, with no alternatives, the coalition obeyed. Human ships lured the armada forward, feigning disorganized retreats. They scattered across multiple systems, baiting the enemy into overextending. At first the Krallic laughed, their commanders mocking the cowardice of their prey. But then the traps sprung. Mining colonies, long abandoned, exploded with concealed charges when enemy fleets entered. Supply lines, already strained by earlier sabotage, collapsed entirely under renewed raids. Communications were severed by jamming devices planted weeks in advance. Piece by piece, the massive armada lost cohesion. Ships drifted without orders. Units clashed with each other in the chaos. What had begun as a storm turned into fragments scattered across a void. Then came the final blow. The humans had mapped the enemy's patterns not just of movement, but of ego. The warlord's flagship, centerpiece of the entire fleet, was isolated by false transmissions. Believing himself surrounded by allies, he advanced alone into a sector seeded with traps. Coalition vessels emerged from hiding, not in a glorious battle line, but in coordinated strikes hitting weak points. Missiles ripped through engines, energy lances cut communication arrays. And then, as the flagship faltered, human boarding teams struck. No one in the council chambers will ever forget the broadcast. The warlord, a towering beast who had slaughtered millions, was dragged in chains before his own crew, forced to kneel. The humans transmitted his defeat across every channel, letting the entire Krallic fleet watch as their master's voice was broken, his arrogance shattered. The invincible fleet crumbled in minutes. Soldiers deserted. Commanders turned their ships and fled. The warlord's image, kneeling before humans, became the scar that no weapon could inflict. The coalition fleets, stunned, realized the impossible had happened. The tide had turned. For the first time, the galaxy saw the Krallic retreat. The war did not end in a grand final battle, but in silence. The Krallic, once unstoppable, collapsed under their own fear. Colonies they had occupied rose in rebellion. Fleets refused to answer their commanders. The once terrifying tide receded into scattered raiding parties, hunted down with relative ease. The coalition celebrated, worlds lit in triumph. Yet the humans did not join the parades. They stood apart, as if victory was not theirs to savor, but a burden to carry. The council assembled once more, this time not in despair, but in uneasy gratitude. Delegates showered the human commander with praise, some with reluctant admiration, others with genuine reverence. But when asked how they wished to be rewarded, the human only spoke one sentence. Reward us by remembering. Confusion spread. The commander continued. You thought of us as your last chance, your final gamble. And you were right. But you must never forget why you called us. You waited until defeat was certain. You allowed pride and protocol to blind you. If you had called earlier, fewer would have died. If you had listened to warnings, perhaps you could have resisted alone. Remember this, we are not saviors. We are a consequence. The chamber grew cold. Even in victory, the humans were not gentle. They did not speak of glory, only of lessons carved in blood. The council leader finally asked, "And what of the Kralik? Shall we pursue them to extinction?" The visor turned, the voice quiet but sharp as a blade. "No. Let them live. Let them tell the story of what happened when they thought themselves invincible. Let their children remember the day their warlord knelt. Fear will police them better than any treaty." A hush fell over the chamber. The humans had given them victory, but not comfort. They had delivered survival, but demanded humility. And perhaps that was the cruelest, most necessary gift. When the humans departed, their fleets scattering back to the dark, the coalition realized they had glimpsed something both terrifying and awe-inspiring. Humanity did not merely fight wars. They rewrote them. They transformed defeat into fear, fear into collapse, and collapse into memory. Other species fought to win. Humans fought to be remembered. Across the galaxy, stories spread faster than any transmission. Refugees whispered it in relief. Soldiers repeated it in awe. Even enemies carried it like a curse. The phrase became legend, echoing from star to star. We were losing, so we called humanity. And nothing was ever the same.